The twin suns of Proxima Vega bore down with merciless intensity, casting hard shadows across the fractured pavement of Netharl's industrial district. The air shimmered with heat rising from the slag pits and corroded walls, each breath thick with metallic dust and the faint tongue of ozone from malfunctioning conduits. Workers trudged through the narrow alleys, their bodies coated in a permanent layer of grime, eyes downcast, shoulders bent from endless shifts in the mines. Above it all, the skeletal spires of the Tiberium refineries loomed like monuments to suffering, pumping poisons into the sky with a rhythmic, mechanical heartbeat. Adam Hawk leaned against the cracked wall of the food dispensary, his muscular frame slouched in fatigue. His jumpsuit, once standard-issue blue, was mottled with years of oil stains and dust, clinging damply to his skin. At 6'4", he towered over most of the other miners, a broad-shouldered silhouette the others. Called the Wall, the name suited him. Adam didn't bend easily, not to the bosses, not to the work, not even to exhaustion. Yet as he wiped the sweat and dirt from his brow, smearing it across an already filthy face, he felt as brittle as the ground beneath his boots. He stared down at the so-called meal in his hands, a gray block of processed protein squeezed between. Slices of something barely passing for bread. Synthetic food made by Voxian suppliers, for humans who, in their minds, weren't worth real nourishment. Adam had been choking it down for 6 months now, and each bite was worse than the last. He muttered a curse at the unappetizing lump and forced himself to chew, reminding himself of the only reason he was here: hazard pay. 18 months on this rock would set his younger sister back home up with a real education. That was enough. To swallow any amount of misery. Movement caught his eye. At first, it was just a shadow bending through the heat haze shimmer, wavering and thin. Then, as the figure drew closer, he realized it was not just a miner passing by. A Lumidian woman approached with hesitant steps, her pale blue skin dulled by layers of dust. Her short white hair, limp and tangled, framed a face that even exhaustion could not strip of its delicate beauty. But her eyes, large, luminous, filled with desperation and shame, were what struck him hardest. Clinging to her tattered dress was a child, a small girl with the same pale hair. Her tiny fingers knotted tightly in fabric, as though the world would sweep her away if she let go. The woman stopped a few paces from him, her gaze lowered her, voice soft but clear through a heavy accent. "Excuse me, sir," she said, every word strained as though it cost her something to speak. "Please, may I have the rest of your sandwich for my child? We have not eaten in 3 days." Adam froze. Mid-bite, the lump of gray matter hung suspended between his hands. His first instinct was disbelief. 3 days? But the sight of the little girl staring at his food, her eyes wide and hungry, erased all doubt. Her lips were cracked, her cheeks hollow, her knuckles bone white as she clutched her mother's dress. 3 days? His voice, normally a deep rumble of authority, was softened now, almost uncertain. The woman nodded, still refusing to meet his eyes. "I would not ask, but for my daughter." Adam glanced down at the half-eaten slab in his hand, then at the girl. Something inside him shifted. He'd seen cruelty enough to know how easy it was to turn away. But there were lines he could never cross. Hungry people, in his book, got fed. That was it. He set the sandwich aside and straightened, his full height casting a shadow across them both. "Wait here," he said. The woman flinched, fear flashing in her luminous eyes at his towering presence, but he was already striding toward the dispensary. 90 seconds later, he returned. In his hands were not scraps, but 2 fresh sandwiches, a container of nutrient-enriched milk, and a packet of supplements. He held them out without flourish. "These are human rations. Better than Voxian garbage. The vitamins will help with malnutrition." The woman blinked, her lips parting as though to protest. "We cannot possibly." "You can," Adam interrupted, his tone leaving no room for refusal. "The kid needs it." For the first time she looked up, luminous eyes meeting his. Gratitude shimmered there, but something deeper, too recognition, perhaps. She took the food carefully, breaking off a piece for her daughter, who devoured it instantly with trembling hands. "Thank you," she whispered. "My name is Elra. This is my daughter, Neri." Adam nodded once, a name pressing itself into his mind. Adam Hawk, Mining Division. He checked his wrist display. Break nearly over. "Will you be all right?" A weary smile touched her lips. "We always are, somehow." He started back toward the mines, her voice stopping him. "Mr. Hawk, why would you help strangers, especially non-humans?" Adam glanced over his shoulder, his expression unreadable. In the harsh sunlight, "Lady, where I come from, hungry people get fed. Doesn't matter what color their skin is, or how many fingers they've got." He shrugged those massive shoulders, simple as stone. "That's just how it is." As he walked away, the image of those eyes, luminous, desperate, and now shining with fragile hope, burned itself into him. Something had shifted, subtle but certain. He didn't know it yet, but the universe had just nudged him onto a new path, one that began with a sandwich and would end by reshaping the fate of two worlds. The next day, the heat pressed down heavier than usual, as if the twin suns had conspired to make the miner's punishment unbearable. Adam Hawk trudged from the shaft, with shoulders aching and lungs rasping, metallic dust sticking to every inch of his sweat-drenched skin. He told himself he was heading for the dispensary, just to choke down the bitter coffee it dispensed, a flimsy excuse even to his own ears. He'd spent most of his shift distracted, listening for footsteps that weren't there, scanning shadows for a pair of luminous eyes. The streets around the food station were as bleak as ever, workers slumped against rusted walls, vendors hawking scraps of synthetic goods, the occasional security drone buzzing overhead like a mechanical wasp. Adam claimed a small metal table outside the dispensary and set his steaming cup down, leaning back in the chair as though nothing in the world could touch him. But his gaze kept sweeping the dusty road. He felt like a fool. She wouldn't come back. Why would she? "I hoped you might return here." The voice was soft, familiar, and so close he almost spilled his drink. Adam turned, pulse quickening. Elra stood behind him. She was alone this time. Her face and hands had been cleaned, her pale blue skin no longer dulled by dirt. Even her tattered dress had been washed, the wear still showed at its seams. In the harsh light she seemed different, less a beggar, more a woman reclaiming fragments of dignity. "Where's your daughter?" Adam asked, his tone sharper than intended, his eyes scanning the crowd for the small girl. "With a friend," she said quickly, catching his glance. "A trustworthy one." Then her luminous eyes softened. "I wanted to thank you properly for your kindness yesterday." Adam shrugged, suddenly uncomfortable beneath her gaze. Anyone would have done the same. But they both knew that wasn't true. The other miners barely tolerated Lumidians. To them, the locals were just obstacles to production, collateral damage of corporate progress. Adam gestured to the empty chair across from him. "Sit if you want." She slid into the seat with a grace that seemed foreign here, economical yet fluid, her movements betraying a refinement that didn't belong to the lower districts. Adam noticed it immediately. Up close, her features were striking high cheekbones, a delicate jawline, eyes shifting subtly between violet and indigo, catching every glint of light. "You're not from the settlement," he said at last. "Not as a question but a statement." Her lips curved faintly. "What gave me away?" "Your accent. More polished than the locals, more educated." For the first time, her body stiffened, a tension rippling beneath her composed exterior. "Perceptive of you." Adam leaned forward, his voice low. "So what brings a clearly educated woman to this dust ball, begging strangers for food?" Elra glanced around, checking the street before leaning closer across the table. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. "What if I told you I used to work for Galactic Resources Consolidated?" Adam blinked. The name cut through him like cold steel. GRC wasn't just the parent company of the mines. It was the interstellar power that owned half the contracts in the Proxima sectors. "I was a xenobiologist," she continued, her eyes flickering with something between pride and grief, "studying the ecological impact of Tiberium extraction. And I discovered something they did not want known." Her hand trembled slightly as it brushed her side, and only then did Adam notice the faint line of a scar beneath her collar. Hastily. "Healed. Terminated," she'd said clearly, not only from her position. "What exactly did you discover?" he asked, his voice lowering into something harder now. "That the extraction method is poisoning my people," she whispered. "Slow-acting toxins, invisible at first, but cumulative. It takes years to show. But when it does, entire generations will suffer. And it doesn't stop with Lumidians." She hesitated, then met his eyes. "The compounds affect humans too. Differently, but no less dangerously." Adam studied her face, looking for deception, but there was none, only fear, determination, and exhaustion. "Why tell me this?" he asked. "I work for them. If you're right, I'm part of the problem." "Because you're human," she said simply. "Your kind has a reputation for unpredictability, for not always following the expected path." Her voice softened further. "And because of how you looked at me yesterday. Not with pity, not with disgust, but recognition." The words lingered between them, charged and fragile. Adam became aware of her nearness, the faint scent that clung to her, something sharp, almost electric, laced with warmth like cinnamon. Her eyes didn't waver as she leaned closer. "I need help, Adam Hawk. I need access to communications. Equipment long enough to send my findings to the Galactic Environmental Council. They have authority over GRC." Adam sat back, his mind turning like heavy gears. What she was asking wasn't just risky, it was treason against the company. The smart move would be to report her, collect a bonus, secure his future. Instead, he heard himself say, "There's a terminal in the engineering section. Low security. We could try tonight after third shift." The relief that washed across her face hit him harder than the heat of the suns. And when her hand brushed across his, cooler than human skin, but startlingly gentle, something stirred in his chest that had nothing to do with duty. "Thank you," she whispered, his name laced in her accent like something intimate. Adam didn't pull his hand away. He only nodded once, already aware he'd stepped across a line he could never return from. The south maintenance entrance lay in shadow, the dim scarlet glow of emergency lights painting the rusted walls in blood tones. Adam Hawk arrived 5 minutes early, his boots crunching over grit as he scanned the alley. His broad shoulders hunched slightly, as though instinct alone warned him he was being watched. His lungs ached after another 12-hour shift, each cough rattling deeper than the last. He dismissed it as dust, though Elra's warning about toxins replayed like a whisper in the back of his mind. She appeared precisely on time, emerging from the gloom with a dark cloak drawn around her slight frame. The hood slipped back just enough to reveal the shimmer of white hair, catching what little light remained and forming a fragile halo. Adam's heart kicked at the sight of her. He covered it with a gruff, "You came." "I said I would," she replied softly, her relief palpable. He swiped his access card across the console, the door sliding open with a hiss of hydraulics. "Stay close." Security's light, but not non-existent. They entered the service corridors, long tunnels humming with unseen machinery. The air was cooler here, but stale, tinged with ozone and lubricants. Adam led with steady steps, his bulk filling most of the narrow space, while Elra kept close behind, her movements near silent, precise as they waited for the lift to take them upward. She tilted her head toward him. "How are you feeling?" He glanced down at her, surprised. "Fine. Why? Your breathing is strained. You coughed 4 times since we met." Adam snorted softly, though unease prickled his spine. Dust from the shafts? Her expression tightened. Without waiting for his consent, she pressed her cool palm against his forehead. The touch startled him, clinical in intent, but strangely intimate. A shiver went through him that had nothing to do with fever. "Your temperature is elevated," she murmured, studying his face. "How long have you had symptoms?" "Don't make a fuss," he muttered. "It's nothing." Inside the cramped lift, she stood closer than necessary, her luminous eyes never leaving him. "The toxins affect humans too," she whispered. "I wasn't certain until now, but I've observed miners showing patterns similar to my people. Respiratory distress, neurological decline. They're poisoning all of us, Adam." The lift doors parted with a groan, releasing them onto a dimly lit corridor of humming conduits. Adam's jaw clenched as the truth sank in. The company wasn't simply exploiting labor. They were testing on it. The communications hub lay just ahead, its doorway glowing faint green. But before they reached it, a klaxon shattered the silence. Red lights strobed across the walls. A flat, mechanical voice blared overhead. "Security breach detected in Sector 7. All non-essential personnel clear the area." Adam swore under his breath. "That's not us, but patrols'll be doubled." They pressed forward anyway, only to hear voices around the next corner. Guards heading straight for the hub. Without hesitation, Adam yanked open a maintenance closet door and pulled Elra inside, shutting it behind them. The space was barely large enough for one person. Forced together in the dark, Adam's chest pressed against her slender frame, his arms braced. On either side of her, he could feel the rapid beat of her heart against his own, hear the quickness of her breath mingling with his. "They'll sweep the corridors and move on," he whispered against her ear. His deep voice rumbled through the confined air. Elra tilted her head up, her luminous eyes glinting in the thin strip of light seeping beneath the door. "Your heart is racing." "Can't imagine why," Adam muttered, dry humor failing to mask the heat in his veins. For a long moment, silence stretched, broken only by the muffled stomp of security boots outside. The air grew warmer, charged. Elra's hand rested lightly against his chest, fingers spread as though she could measure his pulse through muscle and bone. Her scent enveloped him again, that strange blend of cinnamon and ozone, intoxicating. "Among my people," she whispered, voice husky, "we say danger awakens our truest desires." Adam's lips curved faintly in the dark. "Humans have sayings like that too." His hand shifted, almost unconsciously, to her waist. Her gaze didn't waver. "And what are your truest desires, Adam Hawke?" Instead of answering, he lowered his head, halting just short of her lips. He gave her a moment to retreat, but she didn't. Instead, Elra closed the distance, her kiss tentative at first, then fierce. Her lips were cool against his, her touch light but trembling with intensity. Adam pulled her closer, one hand sliding into the silk of her white hair as the kiss deepened. For a heartbeat, cultural differences, fear, and logic dissolved, leaving only heat, need, and the unspoken promise of something greater. When at last they broke apart, breath mingling in the dark, Elra's eyes shimmered with wonder. "Your warmth. It's unlike anything I've known." Adam brushed a thumb along, her jaw still holding her close. "And you're like no one I've ever met." A violent cough tore through him then, forcing him to turn away, hand braced against the wall as his lungs spasmed. He tasted iron on his tongue. Elra's expression hardened with worry. "It's getting worse. We must move quickly before it's too late for all of us." Adam straightened, jaw set, determination burning through his exhaustion. "Then let's move." Together, they slipped back into the corridor. What had begun with a sandwich had become something far more dangerous and far more binding. And as Adam led her toward the communications hub, he knew with iron certainty, whatever line he'd crossed, there was no going back. The engineering section of Netharl was a maze of humming conduits and service corridors, place where the companies. Heart pulsed unseen by the workers above. The communications hub was tucked deep within, a sterile room filled with glowing consoles and the faint buzz of energy fields. Adam Hawke's broad frame moved with practiced confidence through the labyrinth. Elra close behind, her cloak whispering. Against the walls. His jaw was tight, lungs still raw from the coughing fit, but he kept moving. He'd made his choice. There was no turning back. The hub door slid open under Adam's bypass code. He stepped aside, allowing Elra to slip forward, her long fingers deft as she connected a data chip to the terminal. The console flickered to life, a cascade of files scrolling across its surface. "This contains everything," she whispered, her voice taut with urgency. "Chemical analyses, internal memos, projections." Her words faltered as the lines of text burned across the screen. Adam leaned in, scanning the reports with a grim frown. One file stopped him cold. Avoxian. Directive marked Eyes Only Director Level Clearance. His stomach tightened as he read. Project Harvester continues to exceed expectations. Test subjects show increased susceptibility to behavioral modification after 3 months of exposure. Lumidian deterioration rapid, but human subjects retain. Combat efficiency. Proceed to Phase 2. Adam felt the blood drain from his face. "This isn't mining," he muttered, horror lacing his tone. "It's weapons research. They're dosing us. Using us." Elra's luminous eyes reflected the screen's glow, their usual violet shade darkened by dread. "They mean to turn U.S. all into soldiers, docile, obedient, without will of our own." Her voice dropped. "They've been planning war." Adam's fists clenched. He thought of the miners coughing blood in the barracks, the Lumidian children too weak to run through the dusty streets. He thought of Neri's hollow cheeks. Rage welled in his chest, stronger than the ache in his lungs. The terminal chirped softly. Transmission in progress. Data streamed away into the void toward the Galactic Environmental Council, toward anyone who might listen. But before Adam could exhale in relief, the room blazed red. A shrill alarm pierced the air. Security breach detected. Communications. Hub. All personnel respond immediately. Adam cursed. "They've traced us." He grabbed Elra's hand, his calloused grip swallowing hers. "We need to move, now." They bolted from the hub just as a squad of armored security officers rounded the far corridor. Energy rifles snapped to shoulders, beams of searing light cutting through the air where they'd just been. Adam yanked Elra down a side passage, shouldering open a hatch that led to a narrow maintenance shaft. He clambered down first, his broad shoulders barely fitting, then reached up to pull her after him. The metal rungs rattled beneath their combined weight. "They'll lock down the sector." Elra gasped, her breath quick but steady. "They'll try," Adam growled, his voice echoing through the shaft. They dropped into a dim corridor 3. Levels below, the walls lined with coolant pipes dripping condensation. Adam staggered briefly, chest heaving, another fit of coughing racking his body. Dark flecks of blood spattered the steel floor. Elra steadied him, her cool hands anchoring his fevered flesh. "You're deteriorating fast," she said, her voice trembling with fear. The toxins are burning through you. He waved her off, forcing himself upright. Later, right now, we find your daughter. They pushed forward, following service tunnels toward the outer levels. But as they emerged into a broader hall, the sight before them froze them both. A line of miners, human and Lumidian alike, marched in eerie unison toward the loading docks. Their faces were blank, eyes glazed, bodies moving as though pulled by invisible strings. Adam recognized one of them. A human from his own shift, a man who used to sing old Earth ballads during rest breaks. Now his expression was vacant, his stride mechanical. Suddenly, he faltered, clutching his head. No, something's wrong. I don't want to... His voice cracked like a broken wire. A Volxian guard strode forward, pressing a small device against the man's neck. Instantly, the miner straightened, all resistance gone. Elra's voice was a whisper of horror. Advanced exposure. The control isn't perfect yet, but they're already turning them. Adam's chest burned with rage, hotter than fever. He tightened his grip on Elra's hand, pulling her back into the shadows. We need allies, he said, voice iron. If they can take away free will, then the only chance left is fighting before it's gone. Behind them, shouts rang out. Lights swept the corridors. Security drones buzzed like hornets on the hunt. The net was closing, but Adam Hawk had already chosen his side. And nothing, not toxins, not fear, not the entire weight of a corporate empire would stop him from protecting the woman and child fate had thrown into his path. The chase had begun, and this time there would be no running back to safety. Only forward into danger, into war. The Lumidian settlement should have been a place of refuge, but under the cold lights of Voxian patrol ships, it looked like a prison. Barricades sealed. The perimeter, guards in gray armor funneled residents into neat columns, and drones hovered above with weapons primed. Families were herded into pens, children wailing as they were torn from parents' arms. The air stank of ozone, dust, and fear. Adam, Hawk, and Elra crouched in the shadow of a broken water tower, watching the plaza unfold like a nightmare. Adam's lungs rattled with each breath, a deep burn that spread into his chest, but he forced himself to focus. His eyes scanned the groups until they locked on a small figure huddled among the sickly children. Pale hair, skin dulled by illness. Nary. Elra inhaled sharply, her hand clutching Adam's arm. She's there. Oh, stars. She's with the ill ones. Even from across the plaza, Adam could see the listless way the girl leaned against another child, her little body too weak to hold itself upright. Rage surged in him, white hot. He'd been ready to die for his own reasons, but now? Now it was personal. They waited for the cover of the mist that began to curl through the streets. Dr. Harlow had kept his word. The atmospheric processors had been tampered with, venting a prismatic fog that refracted the lights into dazzling shards. The drones jittered in confusion. Their sensors scrambled. Guards cursed, shouting orders into comms. Now, Adam hissed, pulling Elra with him. They darted between alleys, heaping low, the fog cloaking their approach. His heart hammered, not only from exertion, but from the gnawing awareness that every second counted. At last they reached the pen where the children huddled. Elra slipped forward first, her voice breaking as she knelt before her daughter. Nary, little star, it's me. It's Mother. The child stirred, blinking through fever-glazed eyes. But instead of joy, her expression twisted with fear. She shrank back, clutching the tunic of a Lumidian boy beside her. No, you're not my mother. Mother left me. The nice guards are taking care of me now. Elra froze as though struck. Her face crumpled, lips trembling, eyes wide with devastation. The toxins had already poisoned the girl's mind, eroding trust, rewriting loyalties. The very weapon Elra had warned of was at work in her own child. Adam moved in quickly, kneeling to the girl's level, his massive frame shrinking to something less intimidating. His deep voice softened. "Neri, my name's Adam. I'm a friend. Your mother never left you. She's been fighting to get you back." The child looked at him uncertainly, her small fingers clutching her knees. "You're human." She sighed, as if the word itself carried weight. "That's right," Adam said gently, extending his calloused hand. "And humans keep their promises. I promise we're here to help you. Will you trust me?" For a long moment, the child's luminous eyes darted between his weathered face and her mother's tear-streaked one. Slowly, hesitantly, she placed her tiny blue hand in his. ELR. I let out a sob of relief, her hands trembling as she reached forward. But the moment was shattered by a voice that cut through the fog like a blade. How touching. The crowd parted as a tall, ridged figure strode into view, flanked by armored guards. Director Krell. His gray face was carved into an expression of contempt, his ridges twitching in agitation. The cold authority in his voice silenced even the guards. A human miner and a disgraced scientist playing heroes. His lips twisted into what might have been a smile. Predictable. Your species is known for misplaced sentiment. Elra rose to her feet, shielding Neri instinctively. These are not test subjects, Krell, she spat, her voice trembling with rage. They are people children. Krell's gaze slid to her, unblinking. Rights are constructs of the weak. Progress requires sacrifice. And you, Doctor, were always too sentimental for real progress. He gestured lazily. Seize them. All of them. Guards advanced, rifles glowing with charged plasma. Adam shifted, stepping in front of Elra and Neri, his body forming a wall of flesh and will. Every instinct screamed at him to fight, to protect. But unarmed, cornered, it would be suicide. Before the circle could close, another voice rang out, loud and defiant. Not today, Krell. From the mist surged Dr. Harlow, leading a ragged band of miners, human and the median alike, armed with tools, pipe wrenches, mining torches, and stolen rifles. Their faces, once hollow with exhaustion, now burned with fury. The first charge crashed into the guards with the violence of desperation. Plasma fire lit the fog in throbbing bursts. Miners shouted, guards cursed, drones screeched in static confusion. Chaos exploded across the plaza. Adam scooped Neri into his arms, her small frame clinging to him instinctively, and grabbed Elra's hand with his free one. We're not dying. Here, he growled over the din. They broke into a run, pushing through the fog, weaving between clashing bodies. Behind them, Director Krell's cold voice barked orders, his presence looming like a shadow that would not be outrun. Ahead, through the haze and firelight, Adam saw the faint glow of the landing pads. Ships waited damaged, sabotaged, but ships nonetheless. Hope, fragile and desperate, flared in his chest. But the price of escape was only just beginning to reveal itself. The landing pads loomed through the swirling mist, jagged silhouettes of battered transports and cargo haulers glowing beneath harsh floodlights. Security drones zipped overhead, their beams cutting through the fog like searchlights. The air was thick with smoke and ozone, punctuated by shouts and the whine of energy fire. Adam Hawk barreled forward, Neri clutched tight against his chest, Elra keeping pace beside him, her white hair glowing faintly in the chaos. When they reached the first row of ships, Adam's heart sank. Almost every vessel had been gutted. Fuel. Lines slashed, navigation consoles ripped apart, reactors disabled beyond quick repair. The company wasn't leaving anything to chance. If the purge was coming, no one outside their chosen personnel was going to escape. They've sabotaged them all. Elra gasped, her eyes darting desperately from one wrecked hull to the next. They mean to leave nothing, no witnesses, no evidence. Adam set Neri down gently against a bulkhead, scanning the lineup with a grim scowl. Not all, he muttered, his gaze fixed on a smaller transport at the far edge of the pad, a mining equipment carrier designed for heavy loads, but simple enough to hotwire. That one. It's ugly, but I can make it fly. Another coughing fit racked him, doubling him, over until blood speckled the metal decking. Elra caught him, her cool hands steadying his burning skin. "You're running out of time," she said urgently. Her other hand went into her cloak, producing a small vial of clear liquid. She pressed it into his palm, the last enzyme dose. "It will keep you moving." Adam stared at it, then at her. "You keep it. You and Neri." Her jaw set, luminous eyes fierce. "You'll die without it. We'll all die if you can't get that ship flying. Take it." For a moment he hesitated, then uncapped the vial and swallowed. Bitter fire burned down his throat, but within seconds, the tightness in his chest began to ease. His vision cleared, his body steadied. He looked at her, his voice rough but steady. "You just gave me your lifeline." Elra's lips curved into a faint smile, sadness and resolve mingling. "I gave it to us." A sharp whistle split the night. Guards spotted them, shouts rising as rifles powered up. Adam scooped Neri back into his arms and sprinted toward the transport. Elra ran at his side, covering their flank as plasma bolts hissed past. The transport's ramp was half lowered, its hull scarred but intact. Adam shoved Neri up first, then hauled Elra aboard before climbing in himself. The cockpit smelled of grease and burnt circuitry, but Adam's hands moved with the certainty of a man who'd tore apart machinery his whole life. He yanked open panels, twisting wires, forcing connections. Sparks showered his arms, but the console lights flickered to life. Engines online. Elra breathed, relief mixing with disbelief. "Basic systems only," Adam said, grim focus in his voice. "But it'll get us off the ground." Behind them, Neri whimpered as blaster fire struck the ship's hull, the impact ringing like a death knell. Adam glanced through the viewport. Director Krell himself was advancing across the pad, flanked by armored soldiers. He raised a heavy weapon, its barrel glowing with lethal charge. "Strap in." Adam roared, slamming the ignition sequence. The transport shuddered, engines whining as the thrusters roared to life. Metal moorings groaned before snapping free, the entire ship lurching upward. Krell's shot fired, scorching the hull in a blinding flare. The vessel bucked, alarms wailing as systems flickered. Elra strapped Neri into a jump seat, then moved to Adam's side, her cool hand pressing against his shoulder. He could feel her strength flowing through that touch, her faith anchoring him. "Whatever happens," she whispered over the rising howl of engines and alarms, "you've already saved us in the ways that matter most." Adam covered her hand with his, locking eyes with her for the briefest moment. "We're not done yet." The transport clawed its way off the landing pad, flames and plasma fire chasing it into the night sky. Behind them, the colony's loudspeakers blared the countdown. Containment purge commencing in 90 minutes. All authorized personnel evacuate immediately. This is not a drill. The ground below flickered with firelight and chaos as miners clashed with security forces, as fog and flames swallowed Netharl. Ahead, only darkness and the stars awaited. But as the ship rose into the poisoned skies of Proxima Vega, Adam Hawk knew this was only the beginning. The company would not let them go easily. The pursuit was coming. And when it did, the real fight would begin. The transport rattled violently as it clawed into the upper atmosphere, the deck plates shuddering with every blast that grazed its shields. Warning klaxons howled in shrill defiance of Adam Hawk's iron grip on the controls. Sweat slicked his brow, his jaw set as he wrestled the yoke, coaxing every ounce of speed from engines that had no business lifting off at all. Elra sat beside him in the co-pilot's chair, her long fingers flying over the jury-rigged console, trying to stabilize power distribution. Behind them, Neri clung to her harness, eyes wide, her small chest heaving with fear. Each vibration of weapons fire made her flinch. "They're gaining," Elra said, her voice tight but steady. Through the viewport, the looming shadow of a Voxian cruiser filled half the sky, its predator's silhouette sleek and merciless. Two smaller interceptors streaked ahead, weapons glowing hot. Adam's lips curled in a grim line. "Then we make them work for it." He hauled the transport into a barrel roll, slinging the ship through a debris field wreckage from some forgotten battle that littered the edge of the system. Shattered hulls and fractured plating spun silently through the void, grave markers of a war long lost. "Are you insane?" Elra gasped as they dove between two jagged slabs of metal, sparks flaring across the shields. Adam gave her a half-smile, even as sweat dripped into his eyes. "Most of the time. But big ships like theirs can't maneuver in here. If we thread the needle, we might just buy ourselves breathing room." Her luminous eyes locked on him, and despite the chaos she gave a short laugh, half disbelieving, half admiring. "Humans," she murmured. "Always unpredictable." The transport weaved through the wreckage, dodging rusted beams and spinning hulks. Plasma fire seared past, narrowly missing them. One interceptor miscalculated, clipping a fragment of debris and spiraling out in a bloom of fire. The other adjusted course, dogging them relentlessly. Then the cum crackled to life, a voice smooth and cold. "Impressive, human," Director Krell drawled. "But futile. You cannot outrun inevitability." Elra stiffened, fury flashing across her features. "He won't stop, Adam. He'll chase us to the ends of the stars." Adam's hands tightened on the controls. "Then it's about time someone stopped him." Before Krell's taunts could continue, a new signal cut across the comms, crisp and authoritative. "Unidentified transport. This is Captain Rix of the Earth Colonial Defense Cruiser Dauntless. We've received your transmission. Hold position. Reinforcements inbound." Adam barked a laugh, wild and fierce. "Told you sending it wide was the right call." Moments later, hyperspace ripped open. The Dauntless burst into real space, its vast form bristling with guns, flanked by wings of fighters. They streaked into the fray with precision fire, tearing into the Voxian cruisers. Explosions flared like dying stars, shockwaves rattling atoms. "Battered vessel," Krell's voice roared over the comm, stripped of composure. "This isn't Overhawk." But his cruiser was already pulling back, fighters scattering like startled insects. The Dauntless's tractor beam locked onto Adam's transport, dragging the failing craft toward safety. As the glow of the docking bay swallowed them, Adam finally allowed himself a breath that wasn't laced with tension or blood. When the ramp lowered, uniformed officers and medics flooded the deck. Elra held Neri close as doctors scanned the child, relief softening her exhausted features. Adam staggered, nearly collapsing until Elra's arm caught him. Her touch steadied him as much as her eyes did. Weeks later, on New Terra Station, Adam stood before the Galactic Council. Elra at his side, Neri in the gallery with Dr. Harlow, her cheeks full with health again. He recounted everything: the toxins, the brainwashing, the corporate purge. The evidence Elra had risked her life to secure flared across holodisplays, damning and undeniable. When he finished, silence held the chamber. Then a human counselor rose. "Adam Hawk, your actions represent the highest ideals of humanity: courage, compassion, defiance of tyranny. The Council recognizes you and Dr. Elra for your service to more than one world. An agency will be formed, Interspecies Protection. We ask you to serve. Adam's gaze drifted to Elra. Her hand slipped into his, cool against his heat, her luminous eyes shining with something more than gratitude. He thought of the day it began, a hungry child and a half-eaten sandwich. And how, from that smallest of choices, the fate of two peoples had shifted. "I'll serve," he said, his voice steady, "on one condition, that Dr. Harlow and Elra are part of it." This wasn't just me. It never was. The council murmured approval. That night, in the quiet of an observation deck, Adam watched the stars wheel silently beyond the viewport. Elra leaned against him, her daughter asleep between them. She whispered, "Among my people, there is a ritual after surviving. Death together. A promise of life, bound as one." Adam smiled faintly, brushing her pale hair back from her face. "And what does that mean for us?" Her answer was a kiss that bridged every difference, every scar, every star between their worlds. The galaxy stretched out before them, dangerous, uncertain, vast. But Adam Hawk had no doubts now. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness was enough to spark a fire that could burn across the stars. And sometimes humanity's greatest strength was as simple and as unstoppable as compassion.